Hey everybody, I'm MS Farzan, and welcome back to this video series on working with Vue for digital tabletop web development. We're picking up where we left off in the previous video, and in this video we're going to build a simple dice roller using our Vue application. Let's get started. So what we've covered so far is how to create a little bit of HTML and style it with CSS. And what we need to talk about is what does Vue do and how does it help us make our websites interactive? It does so by using JavaScript to add functionality to different parts of our website that we might use. Let's look at an example of how this can work. I'm going to delete what we have here in between the div elements. And we don't need this styling either. Let's just keep it clean. And let's create a button by creating opening and closing button tags, and we'll just say in between them, click me. And I'll go to my command line interface, make sure that I'm in the root directory, which is my dice-roller directory, and write npm run serve to serve our application. Okay. And I hit reload because I already had that page open, and I see at the localhost 8080 I just have a button that says click me. Great. Very exciting. Now the thing that I might want to do here is create some functionality around this button. Like, for example, maybe every time I click the button, a message comes into my console. I log to the console some sort of message. And the way that we access the console, at least in Chrome, is by hitting F12 or Control-Shift-I. And that brings up this helpful console for us, which is kind of like the web version of this command line interface we've been using. So within the app, in this export default, in between these curly braces is where I'm going to do some of my work. All of the JavaScript is going to go in between these script tags, and the way that Vue handles the JavaScript is that in between these export default, in between the curly braces after export default is where most of your code is going to live. You can look it up on the Vue CLI or the Vue.js website to see the different things that you can do, but we'll be using two specific parts of the Vue CLI. The first one is called data, and the other one is called methods. We're actually just going to do methods first because it is going to allow us to write our custom functions that we're going to use throughout the process of building our application. So after name app, comma, we're going to write methods, and for some reason Visual Studio doesn't like the way that the indentation works in this with this scaffolded app. So I'm going to go to Edit, Advanced, and Format Document, and it's just going to indent everything the way that it should be. And under methods, I'm going to create an object. And that object is going to have key value pairs. And let's just say we'll create a method that's just called log to console. And we'll just say log to console is a function that takes no parameters. And what does it do? It says console.log hello world. That's the way we create a custom function in Vue. And when we click the button, right now we're just clicking this button, nothing's happening. We need a way to tell Vue that when we click the button, we want this this log to console function to run. So when I say button up here as the tag in the opening tag, I'm going to create a space and I'm going to say v-on : click equals, and then in quotation marks, log to console, and make sure that I'm spelling it exactly the same way. This v on is kind of like, okay, view on click, or when a button is clicked, then do this thing in between the quotation marks. V on :click equals log to console. Now, after I've saved it and hit click me, we'll see hello world, and it just keeps happening every time I do that. That's what we mean by adding interactivity to our website. If you just have basic HTML and CSS and no JavaScript, and no way of added functionality, there's very few things you can do in terms of having interactivity. You can have a static web page that looks pretty and shows images or videos or text or whatever you want. You could even have a form and have that form send an email to your email address with a bunch of information about the user's name or their email address or whatever it is you want them to send you. But in terms of more robust functionality or interactivity, you're going to have to turn to a JavaScript framework to do that for you. You could obviously just write plain JavaScript, but most of these frameworks help abstract away all of the plain JavaScript that you'd have to write and make it easier to write that JavaScript for your applications. So let's add to this a little bit more. Let's add a new parent to this, and we'll call this div and give it an ID equal to dice-roller. Okay. And let's put everything that we already have, which is just this button, which itself is parented, into a div, and create this nice little looking HTML. And functionally, we see the same thing, and the thing works the same way. But what we're going to do is we're going to add style to the entire this entire part of our application by saying hashtag dice-roller. What do we want to do with it? Let's say color cyan. Make the text color to be cyan. So if we had some, let's say we created a paragraph element here, we say hello, then the text would be cyan. And outside of that, let's just say body background black. Okay, now we can see the cyan color better. Okay, so we're styling the entire body of the application or of the HTML in black, and just the dice roller element or the dice roller ID cyan. Okay, now that we know that, we can just delete this. And let's call this div ID equals input. That doesn't say input at all. We'll call this input, and we'll deal with the styling of input later. But at the top of this, let's just say we'll create a header that says input. Just like that. And this is where we want someone to input, perhaps ourselves if we just want to roll dice ourselves. This is how we'll signify that there's a section that we want people to use to input whatever parameters they want for their dice roller. And then we'll have an output section that we'll create right now. Underneath all this, we'll create another div. And divs are just kind of like containers that you can use to insert different HTML and manipulate them in different ways. We'll see usage of them throughout this video. We'll say div ID equals output and use a header to say output. Save it. We see an input and output. Great. And let's create a just a simple roll button. And we'll say we'll create a paragraph element and say roll dice. Oh, well, actually, yeah, we already have a button. Let's say roll dice. And then we're going to move this button element within these p tags, so that now when we open our application, we see that it's nicely in line. We say roll dice, and it says click me right next to it. Hey, that's cool. Okay, so we've created a paragraph element, and we've nested the button within that element to say, and it says roll dice, and then the click me button is within that element as well. We can make this look a little bit cleaner by just pressing enter here. And indenting it so that we can kind of like see it a little bit better there. But you know, however you want to do it is fine. Okay. And then let's go to the JavaScript aspect of our application and actually create that method that will roll the dice for us. And so let's say in the method section, we want to say a new function could be, I have to add a comma after this as we're writing a new key value pair within an object, which requires a comma after the previous one. We'll say roll is a function, doesn't take a parameter at this point, and we'll create a result, or a variable called result. We say let result equal, in parentheses, similar to how we've done it in a previous video. If you recall from one of our previous videos, we made a simple dice roller using Node. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to say math.floor times 1 plus math.random parentheses times, and let's say we want to roll a 20-sided dice, so we'll say times 20. And I think I have too many. Do I have too many? No, I have enough. And then console.log result. If you're a little confused about what we just did here, I'll explain it briefly, but you might want to review that video earlier on in the series about creating a random number generator or a dice roller. What we're doing is we're using math.random, which is a built-in JavaScript function that selects a number in between 0 and 1. We're multiplying that by 20, and we're adding 1 to it and using math.floor to get in the closest integer that is the lowest integer related to that. So like if we do, if we get 10.125 or something like that, it'll just select 10. And then we're storing that in the variable called result, and then we're logging result to console. And now instead of logging to console this just hello world, we'll say roll dice v on click equals roll. So we're using the roll function when somebody clicks rather than the log to console function. Save it. Hit click me, and we get 3, 11, 1, 17, 16, 19, 11, 1, 18, 19. Come on, give me a natural 20. We might be here all day. Oh, wow, 3 ones, 4 ones, 5 ones. I'm really unhappy. Okay, got the natural 20. We can keep going. That's definitely how I play role-playing games. Just keep rolling till you get a 20. So cool. That's just a very basic dice roller. So let's start by adding a p element and saying roll d2. And then another one that says roll d4. And then another one that says roll d6. And then roll d8. Whoops. Roll d8. And then roll d10. I think you're see where I'm going with this. Roll d12. Roll d20. Not sure what we need to do all of these, but whatever, we're doing it. And roll d100. Okay, we see each one of those there. And within each one of these, we're going to add, I'm going to just delete this line down here. We're going to add one of those buttons. I need a space there. You could style this differently, like if you wanted it to be outside of the tags, you could do that. I'll show you what that would look like. Right now we have them, you know, in line like here, like this. You could instead just put it outside of the tag, and it's like underneath, you know, play with it as you see fit. We're doing this for ease of use, not necessarily for its display at this time. And then for each one of these, right now when I roll, it's just going to be, let me just reload the page so that we can have a fresh console here. Each one of these, when I click on them, you know, it's just rolling a d20, which is, you know, not what I need. What I need to do here is I need to add in the function here, the roll function, I need to add a parameter. Maybe we call it number. And we'll say that let the result equal all of this stuff, and then instead of math.random times 20, we'll just say times number. And then for each one of these, we'll just feed it a number here. We'll say roll 2, roll 4, roll 6. We're passing in these numbers as arguments to the roll function. Roll 8, roll 10, roll 12, roll 20, and roll 100. And now, after I've saved it, when I roll 2, I see that I'm getting 1 or a 2. 4, I'm getting numbers between, well, I'm getting 4 ones, that's not great. Numbers between 1 and 4. 6, 8, 10, 12. Not seeing many 12s, but yep, there's a couple 11s. And D20, got a 19, but no 20. And when I roll 1D100, I see, ooh, got a 99. That would be pretty good for your wild magic table. And that's working fine. That's great. So if I needed to sim a bunch of numbers, that's one way that I could do it. But it's not great from a user interface standpoint because I'm not seeing any of that output on my screen, and that's what we want to use the output section for. View helps us do that pretty easily as well. The way that we're going to handle it is looking at our, right, this section that says name right under that. We could actually put this anywhere within this export default object. But right after the name, just to keep it clean, we'll put data and make that equal to a function. And say return another object. That's and we need a comma after this to make Vue happy. That's this is Vue's way of handling what's called state. A state in an application signifies what's going on in the application at a particular point in time, and will govern what is being displayed at and what functionality is available at a particular point in time. So when you first come to our application, that establishes a certain state, like the application has been initialized and nothing has happened. perhaps you like are going onto Airbnb or Twitter or Facebook or something like that, and you've clicked on something and that has changed your view of the page and moved it to something else, or you've navigated somewhere else, or you've interacted in such a way that it changes the application state. That is going to determine what is going to be displayed now that the state has changed. That's a very important concept to understand, because when we, if we have certain things that are being displayed at certain points of time, we want to be able to signify, well, what happens when that state changes, and what do we want to display at another point in time. And we won't really have to do too much with it in our simple application, but we will be using the data aspect of it to help change the state of what's happening in our tiny little application here. So let's start by, in the return object, creating a key that's called response, and making that equal to, or we'll have a colon here that says that's just an empty array. And then we'll say in the output section, we want to display the response. The way that you can write signify JavaScript, or in particular here in Vue, the use of, or the reference to a JavaScript, like an object or a variable within your data in Vue, is by putting them in between two pairs of squiggly braces, curly braces. And so we see that response here is just this empty array. We could put something else in it. We could say response, hi there. And we'll see that response is now embedded in our HTML, even though we haven't said hi there here. We've put it down in our data, and we're referring to it by using these curly braces. Let's return it to that empty array. So instead of logging to the console this result, in fact, we can delete this log to console function because we don't need it anymore. What we can do, we could say this dot response dot push you rolled a colon space and then plus result. What are we seeing here? Oh, I misspelled response. Oops. That's pretty helpful, actually. You can see that when you have the console open, it'll give you some sort of error. It'll throw an error for you and let you know a little bit about what happened with that error, which is really helpful. We can see that I just misspelled the word response, and I have skipped over the word this for this moment, and we'll come back to it in a second. Just want you to see that we can use this push function to add to an empty array, which is response, and we'll save it, and I say click me, and I see you rolled a 1, and you rolled a 3, you rolled a 6. Well, I rolled a d6, but I got a 3. Roll my d8, you rolled a 4, you rolled a 7, you rolled a 9, you rolled a... How am I rolling a 4? I'm rolling terribly. I rolled a 19, finally. I rolled a 39. Great. Okay, so we're adding to at the end, or appending to the end of this array called result, and that is automatically being displayed on the screen, which is really cool. But to add a little bit more styling to it, so that I don't have to see these quotation marks or the brackets here, what I can do, which Vue allows for, is I can say p v-4, which is like writing a for loop in Vue. v-4 equals item, comma, index in response, and I have to write colon key equals index. I'll tell you why. Curly braces, item, and curly braces. Now, you see that it has styled it so that I have a p element for each one of these items, and that means that each of them have their own line. The way this works is that v4, as I mentioned, signifies the writing of a for loop in Vue, and I'm saying for, instead of like let I equals 0 and then we increment I say for each item in the response array, which starts out being 0, comma, also for each index. And you'll recall that the more items I have in an array, the more indices I have. So the first item in the array is 0. The second item is 1. The third item is 2, so on and so forth. Each one of those numbers is called the index. So for each item and index in the response, I want to create a unique key for what Vue is creating for me. Vue just requires you to do that. And the way that you signify that is by saying colon key. You're binding the key to the index. So each one of these p tags has a in the back end under the hood that you won't see, it has a key called index that is based off the index. For each of those, I want you to display the item, and I write within curly braces because I don't want you to display the word item. I want you to display the actual item that we've signified here within the array. And so that just, what this is a long way of saying is that we've written a for loop that asks Vue to display a p element with each item for the items in the array called response. So now I don't have to write like 5 or 6 different p elements or create one every time. Vue handles that for me with this built-in functionality. And we see that here on the screen. Now, why did we say this instead of just saying like response.push? The reason why is because at the component level, Vue is treating each one of these components almost like it's generating them every time that we access the application for the first time. So if I just say response.push, it might not know which response I'm talking about and or which array I'm looking for. I want to say this very component that has been generated for me on this website that I'm visiting right now. I'm talking about the response that exists on this component, and I want you to push this, you rolled a plus result into the response that exists on this component. Now would be a great time actually to just, or after you finish watching this video, to research the word this in JavaScript. It comes up a lot and it's really useful to understand it early on so that you're able to use it and know why your code's not working sometimes if you haven't used it. It goes hand in hand with the idea of scope, which we've talked about before, and now would be a good time to refresh your memory about. Very cool. So what we've done here is created a pretty simple and straightforward random number generator, or a dice roller, that is pretty easy to look at both in terms of our code and also in terms of our user interface here. What would be cool is, I don't know why I keep rolling ones and it just destroys me. I guess, man, I am rolling really low. It does not make me happy. But in any case, I guess I rolled a 12 on a d12. That makes me happy. What would be cool is like if we styled this a bit differently, and in the you see how we've named these IDs, these div IDs, input and output. Well, we could come down here and write hash input and hash output, and perhaps make the all the text within the output, we can say color hot pink. And now all of our output is going to be hot pink. Or you could do something with the input, or make this look as you see fit. Look up different types of CSS styling and see if you can make this look the way that you want it to look. And you can also add different types of dice if you want to. You could have a roll 200 dice. You could see if you could look into more view functionality, like if you look into vbind or vmodel, and see how you can use the objects within your key value pairs within your data object to add more things to the statefulness of your application. So I hope that you've enjoyed this introduction to Vue for tabletop web development. If you have, please be sure to like it and subscribe to my channel. I'd also love for your help in sharing information about my books and games by going to entromancy.com or nightpathpub.com/entromancy. And if you feel up for it, you can try your hand at another one of my videos, which is creating a full stack RPG character generator. It's a bit more full on than this introduction that we've done. You do have some of the tools at your disposal to understand what we're doing there, but we'll be working with things like back-end development and doing things with a server and working with a database and that kind of thing. So it might feel a little bit too much to learn all in one go, but I welcome you to try it, and I think that it'll be a great learning experience. And we'll see you soon.